1-minute manager. Also, you can tie into that the conference approach. So when students are struggling to meet a particular goal, doing what the idea approach is, where you might say, well, what else can you do? Or what are you going to do about that task? You can do that with peers, or you can do that with you. Sometimes students respond better with peers. So something called peer mediation is when you train students to say a few phrases to each other, like, that makes me upset. What else might you say instead? And the students turn to each other and say those phrases and practice those phrases. In my kindergarten, they couldn't practice those phrases. I had to tell them exactly what to say. I would have to say, I just hit you, and they would have to say, I just hit you. And I'd have to say, hitting is not good, and they would say, hitting is not good. I'm sorry, I forgive you. You give them all the language, because that's not oftentimes the language they might hear at home. Then by the time they're in a system and they understand goals and expectations, they're able to communicate that with each other. So through the conference approach, you don't say, what did you do wrong? You say, what are your goals? How are you going to fix that? It's a lot of questioning for the students and making them think. Then I would have the students write about that. Miranda, should I tell about my mommy approach too? Yeah. Okay, so the way the bands were raised.
Yeah, this is of course her children. That's why they are good writers.
That's why they're great writers. Because every time they were in trouble, it was, yak, yak, yak from mom. Your mom probably did that too, right?
Still does.
But then I would say to them, what did I just say to you? And you'd hear me say that in class. But then I would say to them, now go write about it. Oh. And they'd have to go to their room, and they would have to write something. Then I'd have to come back into the kitchen. I'd say, now deliver it. And they would have to recite what the issue was.
So you couldn't write.
Yeah.
My mom.
That was in their journals. My mother, but the philosophy of expectations and rehearsing is really what makes the best classroom management. You have expectations and the children have expectations, and when they meet, that's important. But if you don't rehearse what those expectations are, and that's what we just saw in that video, the rehearsal of expectations and also the praising of when those expectations are met too. One of the other things I did in my 3rd grade was when we had celebrations, I would say, I would call it, like for my morning meeting, it was trophy time. What was your trophy? And sometimes the kids would actually say, I played soccer and I scored a goal. But sometimes they would actually say, I'm really proud of myself because, and they would describe these different behaviors that they did and behaviors that they did for each other. I've seen teachers use that, how full is your bucket? That's the kind of environment you're trying to create, where students praise themselves and they praise each other. Listen to this. It is important that children learn to praise themselves about a lot of things, not just their behavior, but their academic achievements and accomplishments, even if it's not perfect. They have to have self-talk so that they feel confident about who they are as a student. You have to mirror that language to them, but eventually you want them to have that language for themselves. So now turn to a partner and tell a partner what you just heard me say. I won't make you write about it and deliver it.
It's beautifully done.
No, seriously, turn to a partner and tell a partner what you
She always has it. It's official. Alright, if you can hear me, touch your head. Alright. They've had Dr. Beta. Alright, touch your elbow if you would like to share one thing that you talked about. Can I have somebody? Nope. Okay. Sarah. I know. That's what shook my head.
Sarah, can you and Lindsay please describe what you just were speaking about after you presented Dr. Bain spoke?
We wouldn't call Sarah.
We talked about how, like Dr. Bainham said, students need to have the language to praise themselves. I'm sure a lot of us deal with a lot of negative self-talk. I do, especially when I get stressed out. So like our students need to have that positive encouragement from themselves so that they're more motivated and have the positive thinking about their successes in school.
Thank you. And this is just another thing I found that I thought it was cute for football season, but your classroom goals, like they're really goals. But that's just what you're working towards in your class, is the goal of, what you want them to.
That could be like your one.
Yeah, goal number one. Yeah. Goal number one.
Yeah.
Would that not be awesome? Okay, so these are just pictures that we found on Pinterest, and they're just for small group classroom management. I really like this one, the lights you can get, and when it's on, she's invisible, so when she's in her small group and doing guided reading, the students can't come to her when that light is on. These are just two similar things about, you can put them on a student that you think knows what's going on in the classroom while you're doing your small group, and the students can go ask them.
I use that all the time. I had necklaces for everything in my room where they were the expert of that, and they were constantly going to each other. Yes, I use that all the time.
Yeah, these two kind of go hand in hand, because when that light's on,
Yep,
you have someone that, these are, they're kind of snazzy, jazzy, so yeah.
But then the prompt is when the child comes to you and not, what do you, stop, you go over here, you can say, find the expert. So you keep your prompt of a reprimand short, where you're not getting engaged in, well, I just have one question to ask you. Well, you can't ask me now because I'm in, you don't say that, you say find the expert. And the prompt gets the behavior managed.
And then the Princess Crown one I thought was really cool, because then when she has that on, they can't talk to her. So the one I saw was when the queen has her crown on, you need to leave her alone. And then
hassle.
Yeah. And then the no bug zone, so it's just a bug light, and when the light's on, you can't bug the teacher. I thought that was really cute.
Okay, also these, the quiet critters is pretty much, this works better for kindergarten, but I'm sure it could be implemented in any grade. So the quiet critters are, say you're doing small group or centers, so you have this jar of your small critters and you put them out and you set them, so everyone can view them, and the noise has to stay to a minimum, because if the noise stays to a minimum, it hurts the quiet critters' ears and they get very upset and they have to go back into the jar. So when they're back in the jar, they're not very happy. And those are your pets. You have to protect them. You have to keep their ears sensible. So I thought that's kind of cute for kindergarten, when they're just kind of learning and if I'm loud, then my poor critters are, have to go back inside. Yeah. So that's just something small to, if you see in a group too, being shh. Yeah, shh. Or critters. So it would kind of be accountability thing. Also, this is just something I saw as well. During small group, you know how chaotic it can be, everyone zooming around, and especially if you do where they can choose what centers there are, as instead of saying, oh, we have to do the carousel, group 1, you go to this center, group 2, you go to this center. So when they're all intermixing, it can get confusing. There's one of you and 25 of them, so I completely understand. But so this would, I don't really necessarily like the number idea, because I don't like to identify the students as numbers. But if there could be a different way to maybe put their initials on the stones, whatever, maybe that would be a better situation. But so this hangs on the door. So say they go to their intervention class, and the teacher comes and just snags them, and you're with another group, and you don't even really know that they have left the room, but you know that's that time that they're leaving. But this is just another way to remind you that, oh, that's where they are. If they go to the bathroom during quiet time when they can't bug you or pester you, and you look around, oh, where's Johnny? Oh, he went to the bathroom. He didn't tell anyone, because I also believe that you don't tell the students if they can't go to the bathroom. So regardless if they ask you or not, you're still going to say yes, you can go to the bathroom. So they can just go during that time. The nurse, I feel as though you might know if the child was leaving for the nurse, but regardless, the office, and then speech pathology, they can go multiple times throughout the day. So just say, oh, you're doing a big lesson and 2 people get pulled, and an hour goes by, and you're what if there's still speech? All you have to do is go over and, check everything. Which also you could tell the other teachers who are coming to get the students, oh, remember, we do this as an accountability thing, responsibility, before they leave the room. So just something, a routine to get into. I'm not going to say this is golden, but just something that, you could try to implement and see how it works.
So now let's take that for the center aspect.
Okay.
So you would replace those by centers. You might have writing center,
Yeah, you could do
library center, or so on.
Listening.
And then you can also have a number next to it. So if you have library center, you can have 4. So then only 4 people can be at the library center at one time. So only 4 of those pebbles go into that library center. When the kids come out of that, then they can look for another center that's open. That's how you keep the kids moving at their own pace to what they want to go to, and not you moving them on the carousel.
Yeah, that's also in my preschool placement this semester. Tess and I are at the same one, but that's how they have a little name tag sticker, has their face and their name on it, and there's 4 little Velcro stickers at each center, or 2 or 3, and if you're there, your name tag and stickers on there, but if that's full, then you have to find a different one. So that's would be similar, but it would be, you wouldn't need their name and face for 4th graders. You could definitely do the number thing. So I see how that would definitely fit into using one of those as well.
So these are 12 tips that we found, and on the next slide it has the website where we found them. So they had more about each tip, so if you would want to go on there. But number 1 is just establish classroom rules immediately and enforce them consistently. Set logical rules and consequences. Use positive instead of negative language. Make your students feel responsible for their own learning environment. Praise efforts and achievements for their own sake, not for the sake of teacher approval. Be mindful of different learning paces and keep the students occupied. Avoid confrontations in front of students. Connect with the parents. Interactively model behaviors. Get the attention of every student before beginning class. Use proximity and directness to your advantage, which I think is a great one, because if you see a student off task, I know in high school when I was chatting and the teacher walked over to me, I'm like, okay, I'm doing my stuff.
Yeah. And they continue talking. You wouldn't even have any idea that they were really on to you, but yeah.
And then be organized. And then that's the website that we found in that.
You need a teacher voice. You need a voice where you change the register of your voice. So if your normal speaking voice is a little higher, you need to go low. And all you need to say is stop. And when the kids hear that lower voice, you don't need to berate them, you don't need to yell. Well, I mean, if they're really loud and you can't be heard, but the point is, when you change that intonation of your voice, they hear it as serious. So your teacher voice should be lower and slower, so that you really stop them in their tracks and they really focus and listen to you. You don't ever have to yell. You don't have to raise your voice, because you've lowered your voice so that they heard a difference in your voice. The reason why people yell is because they want their voice to be an attention grabber. Lowering your voice grabs attention too.
It's less exhausting. Yelling all day is exhausting. So if you just monotone, low. That also goes with the classroom management. So if you have a safe environment and everyone feels like they're a part, working together, you don't have to yell, because that's intimidating and they trust you. So if you yell, it's what's going on? We're not on the same level. We're working together. So if you just have that trust and responsibility, it goes along.
So, and what you're saying too, Caitlin, is that if you have classroom management problems, it is not those kids. It is not those kids. It's you have not followed these 12 rules. You are not being consistent. You are not setting expectations. You are not modeling behavior. I can't tell you how many times I've been to James Byrd when they're not allowed to talk when they're walking down the hall and every teacher is talking. How do you do that to children? And then think children are going to listen to you when you say you're not supposed to talk? That's hypocritical. You can't be like that. That's what modeling that behavior means. It doesn't just mean model it during your morning meeting and have it be over. You have to live your management philosophy in your classroom too.
And that's just like yelling. If you see 2 children yelling and you go, stop yelling, you just yelled. So just like she said, you're not modeling. It'd be more like, you're supposed to be yelling in class.
And that might be all a child is used to at home is yelling. So when they are in your classroom, they should feel safe and trust you. So when you yell, it's putting them back in that mindset that they're at home, and that might not be a safe environment for them.
Yelling.
Yeah. Can't even plan that.
Great segue.
These are just voice level charts that we really like, and these we found on Pinterest, but Teachers Pay Teachers, they have a ton. You can even find stuff for free on there. So this one is just like noisometer, and then you can put we are using R and move the close
Pin number down, yeah. And this one just says no talking, it just has a little bit of definition, but like I said, this may be for older grades, but kindergarten, first, they're just gonna go by the numbers and the pictures. Okay, so some of these are just I don't know, what class? No, who was that? Okay, I don't know,
Mrs. Broom. I think it was
Have you ever heard of Mrs. Broom in any of your classes so far? Okay, well, one of them along this semester. Okay, you will hear about Mrs. Broom, which was a broom that was kind of, decorated as a witch, possibly. but it sat in the corner of the room, and if there was anything that students was really upset about, like irate, like